Welcome to MCN and a series of videos where we talk to MCN staff about the long-term test bikes that they've been running throughout the year. And it's 2024. This is part of our 2020-24 fleet, Yamaha MT-09, being ridden by the legend that is fellow road tester Carl Stevens. Hello mate.
You're too kind, you're too kind.
So the idea with this, most of us run long-termers and we keep the same bike throughout the year. But you've been jammy and you've got two. So the idea was that you ran the MT-09 for the first half of the year and that snazzy XSR 900 GP Marlborough coloured jobby for the second half of the year.
Yep.
But as it turns out, you've kept hold of this for longer than you should because you absolutely love it, don't you?
Yeah, well I did the launch on this earlier in the year and it was really impressive. I've always had a thing for the MT-10. Love the way that it's set up, I love the engine, I love just the way that it's so loopy. This thing almost delivered that, but for an incredible price. It's just over 10 grand. So I was really keen to see, you know, if it would stay exciting, if it would stay enough. And to be honest, like every time I ride it, I just love it even more.
Yeah. Because I haven't actually ridden this generation. You snaffled the launch, didn't you? But the MT-09 has had a bit of a troubled existence. I did the original launch, I think 2013, I think.
Yep.
And the engine and the lightness and the fun factor has never been in any doubt, but the suspension and the geometry wasn't quite right for the first few generations. It was quite high and hard at the front, used to understeer, quite soft and bouncy and slappy. The fueling wasn't very good, but over the years it's become better, isn't it?
Yeah.
2021 was when it really made a jump.
So in all honesty, I've never really liked the MT-09 up until 2021. You know, when it had like the full, you know, the new engine, the new chassis, like the full rebirth. That was when I sort of really enjoyed it, because I love the MT-10 and I love the MT-07.
Yeah.
So it was sort of just, it was a bit of an anomaly. The 2021 one I really enjoyed, but it still wasn't as crisp and as sharp as I'd like it to be, especially on the front end. It still had it still was a little bit just not quite there, whereas this has just gone that little step extra and it's basically answered my prayers. Right.
So is it a little bit more on its nose now,
Yes.
a little bit more stable?
And the riding position's a little bit more aggressive as well. So you just you sort of get that feeling straight away of confidence, and you know that feeling through the front end that the 09's sort of always been lacking a little bit.
So it's kind of behaves a bit like an MT-10 now in terms of fun factor.
Yeah.
And why do you prefer this over the XSR? Because everyone's been raving about that this year.
So I love the XSR. I've always been someone who's just had a ridiculous fondness for sports bikes, but I think on the road I quite like, in my older age, I quite like something that's a little bit more 29.
29, really old.
So I'm quite enjoying something that's a little bit more sort of laid back and built more for fun with less of that sheer focus. Yeah. So the XSR's is comfortable for a sports bike, but it's still reasonably uncompromising. Yeah. And especially for someone who's smaller, I'm just in the process of swapping them over, and I've already ordered quite a lot of bits for the XSR to make it a bit more comfortable and a bit better for me. But I just love the playful nature of this. You know, like we can take it to like the airfield and have some fun on it. I can ride it. I can put my partner on the back, and it's a little bit more comfortable. It's sort of it's just got that little extra bit of fun factor that only a naked can bring.
And nakeds, or sports nakeds, super nakeds, whatever, they just do so much. You can ride to the shops, you can take them on track, you can pull massive wheelies. Yep. Right, as is tradition, we've asked Carl to give us his 10 favourite things about this bike and 10 things he doesn't like so much. So I've got them written down here. I'm not looking at my phone, I'm not checking Facebook. So the first thing you've got is value for money.
So it's just a snip over £10,100, and for that you get a bike that is so nearly a super naked in how it feels. Like the whole package is incredible. It's the best MT-09 that has ever been released by quite a distance in my opinion. It's comfortable but it's exciting, it's agile but it's not too aggressive. It just sort of ticks all the right boxes. You get a really good electronic suite for the most part, you get a reasonable finish on it, and if you look at it where it sits in sort of the segment as well, it's only slightly more expensive than the Street Triple R, but for that you get a shed load more torque, and the most important thing for me is you get cruise control, which is an absolute godsend. I do quite a lot of motorway mileage, and to be honest, I'd pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds extra for cruise control, especially when you've already got an IMU, a ride-by-wire throttle, quick shifter and up and down quick shifter. I think that it's such an oversight not to have it, and it makes such a difference to the riding experience for me. So it's just that complete package for just over 10 grand.
So next thing on our list of goodness is the engine. 64 foot-pound of torque, 117 bhp,
And
3-cylinder.
yeah, it's that motor seems to work in everything they put it in. I really like it in the XSI 900. I really like it in the GP. I really like it in the Tracer 9. It's just such a usable motor. And the thing about the figures as well is that it's not super duper excessive. Obviously, you've got your Super Duke. That thing is an absolute monster. You've really got to get it cranking on to
Exactly. You never use all the power.
Reach the top of the power. Whereas this, you can sort of access pretty much all of it without being ridiculously stupid. It's got that really nice blend of power and torque that you can use on the road. It's also really nice as well when you're sort of sitting at 70. It's not too aggressive or vibey or loud. It makes a cracking noise for a standard bike. So Yamaha have done some, as we said on launch, they've done some special work for
some little speakers in there.
Speakers, yeah, just to give it a little bit more character, which is quite nice and increasingly difficult with all the emissions laws and stuff. So it's just the little details like that. And to be honest, it's just such a fun motor. Like if you want to do them, it does massive wheelies in third gear. If you want to be potting around in town, it's really smooth as long as you have it in street mode on a slightly softer throttle. It just sort of ticks all of the right boxes for me. I want it to be fun, I want it to be exciting, but I also want it to be usable and docile at times as well.
That's always been the MT-09 superpower, it's its engine, and Yamaha have kept that and they made the rest of the bike around it even better. So, right, the next one on your list is noise. Yamaha have been clever in the design of their intakes in order to accentuate the frequency sound.
Yeah, so I know it sounds really stupid, but it's just something that you pick up when you ride other bikes, when you've done loads and loads of miles on it, and it's just the little details that they've put into it that I think that sort of makes this bike whole. Whereas, you know, some things feel a little bit flat. There are other triples that make an incredible sound through the exhaust and stuff, but like everything, I really love a slightly louder pipe. I really like a bit of intake noise. You know, it's part of that experience of riding a bike, and you do actually get that. And it's not actually just marketing guff. You can actually sort of feel it, and it does really add to the riding experience, and it makes the engine probably feel a little more exciting than it is.
Exactly. And what about the exhaust? Does that make a nice sound as well, or is it a bit muted?
It's a bit muted, and it is one of the uglier aspects of the bike as well. That underslung exhaust is pretty rough.
But good for track days.
Yeah, good for track days. It'll always pass a noise limit.
Next thing on your good list is the riding position. And you said for 2024, handlebars are 34.4 mil lower and 1.5 mil further back. The foot pegs are 30.6 mil back, and this is very technical.
I know you like your details.
And then 9.5 millimeter up, which makes the riding position more engaging by pushing the rider further over the front end. You should write for a living.
Well, it's just if you sort of, if you bring it back and you actually think about them, they are quite big numbers. And the difference in that is, whereas before you just had that disconnect with the front end, now you just feel that little bit more connected to it, and that makes such a difference for the way that it feels, the way that it rides, especially like on the brakes on the way into a corner. You just you have a bit more of that sports bike nature to it. That, I know it sounds horrible to compare, but do you know, like the beautiful front end feeling you get on a street triple, where you're just connected to it as if it's almost a super sport bike. This now feels far closer to it in that respect, but you've still got a shed load of space, so it's still really roomy and it's still really comfortable.
Have your cake and eat it, because that's the thing with nakeds, because you sat so far back from the front wheels, sometimes they can feel vague.
Yeah, and they start getting flighty, and it's just kept going in the right direction, which is what I really like.
Okay, so next on your list is the suspension setup. So you said the forks are now equipped with a stiffer spring and the front end slightly more aggressive geometry.
Yep.
So it's more precise on the way into corners, and it's happier holding a line than before. A line at lean angle.
Yes.
It's aggressive and flighty. Okay, so what have they done to the suspension then?
So, in a similar manner to the Ergonomics, they've also made it a little bit more aggressive in its setup as well, which means not only are you sitting more comfortably when you're riding harder, but the suspension's actually able to take it a bit more when you're riding harder. So the last generation of the 09, I found that the SP felt far nicer to ride than the standard model, Whereas I feel like this almost feels like a slightly closer to an SP as
Wow,
a standard model in
Yeah,
that sort
yeah.
of sense in how it's set up.
Yeah.
The way it gives you that little bit more feedback, I think it's not just down to the suspension. I think it is a lot down to the riding position and the geometry change as well, because it just turns in so much sweeter than I could ever remember the 09 ever doing.
Wow.
And it's that combination of all these little, you know, millimeters here, spring rates there, just makes such a difference to the genuine riding position. Like I'd never, on the previous 09s, like I'd be quite happy just jacket and jeans rolling around. Whereas this, I'd be quite happy to stick a set of levers on and go and scrape some knee sliders in that sort of respect and in the feedback you get. But that's also down to what I've done with the tyres as well, which we'll talk about later on.
Has it gone too sporty? Is it still plush and comfortable, or is it a bit too?
For me, it's pretty much bob on. I think if you were gonna ride it slightly softer, if you're someone who wants a bit more of that sort of chilled out roadster style rather than an aggressive naked style, I would definitely soften it off slightly, especially at the rear. But obviously you don't actually get a remote adjuster, so it's a bit of a pain in the neck. So and which is a bit of a pain in the neck when you're taking pillion or chucking luggage done as well. But we've got to remember that it's the price point.
Yeah, it's built down to a price.
Yeah.
Next, quick shifter, 3rd generation, and it's sublime.
So it's the little details I think that make this bike really good, and the quick shifter is absolutely marvellous. It's almost sort of confused me as to why Yamaha have gone down the AMT route on the MT-09, because they put so much time.
That's the new
automatic. That's a new automatic transmission. Yeah. So obviously we're going to be riding that soon, but the quick shifter on this is so good because it works on throttle, off the throttle, both up and down the box, which is really nice, and really it's really crisp as well when you do that, which is, you know, when you're on the motorway and you just want to bash it down a couple and go. It makes things really smooth, and it works through town as well really nicely. Like you can just go bam, 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 3rd, 4th, you know what I mean? And it does so without being too stiff on the boot. It's just got that really nice sort of decisiveness to it, where you can get the nice positive click, but it's not aggressive in the way it cuts the throttle. It's just really slick and pretty seamless as well. It's a really nice bit of kit that almost feels aftermarket in how it's
oh blimey, that sounds really good. Next on your list is switch gear. So I see it's got new switch gear blocks on it now.
Yes.
And what have you said about it? It's odd.
Yeah.
Takes some time to get on with, but it's really nice after you get used to it.
So hopefully our video editor is just showing you a picture of it now, but it's the...
He won't do that.
The way that it's set up is very different to pretty much all other conventional bikes. So it's a really strange setup, and it's not like a bar, it's got like a really slick design, especially on the indicators. So they're like one-click design, and it's really horrible the first time you ride it, because it doesn't feel natural at all, because you click in there, but you can also click on that side and that side. But as soon as you start riding with it, it just feels really soft, really easy to reach, especially because I've only got little hands. So sometimes the indicators are a real pain in the neck, but the way the actual placement is, it's just really nice and soft and easy to use and easy to turn off. The self-cancelling as well, but it's just like a really nice little feature that's been actually quite well thought out, that if you give it a bit of a chance, it works really nicely. And the rest of the buttons as well, really easy to use. It's all very self-explanatory, very simple. It's super easy to change modes on the go or to navigate through the menu.
It looks a lot more elegant than some of Yamaha's past switchgear, which just looked like it'd been fired out of a gun.
Yeah, and the previous MT-09 one's pretty pants, as was the old dash, which was quite small. If you remember.
Well, I think we're on the dash now. The interface, for the most part, really easy to change modes and individual settings too, and they stay that way. And then you talk about the lift control. So we're talking about the dash.
Yep.
Colour dash.
Colour dash, nice TFT. It's when we stick it on.
There you go.
Yep, it's really easy to change the settings on it. So you can change individual settings for individual modes. So you get 2 custom modes and you get preset modes. The thing I like about it is, just say you want to, knock off the back slip regulator or turn the lift up or down. If you turn it off, it stays off in the modes that you set it in. And then you can also adjust the throttle response as well, and it stays that way. So when you turn it off and on,
you don't have to go back into it.
You don't have to keep on messing around. And when you do go into it, it's really easy to set them up and to turn them off and on as well. Although you can't turn the ABS off. That's something
At all.
that's not at all.
Unless you wheelie it for a certain distance.
Unless you wheelie it for a certain distance.
I've been told.
That rumour has it. Also, yeah, just on the subject of which, the electronics on this, it's got a 6-axis IMU. The intervention from the traction control and the lift control is brilliant. It's really slick, it's really smooth. You know, the way that this bike is set up, it can be pretty frisky if you want it to be. And the way that the electronics handle everything is just, it's just really nice and really kind and really calm. Which when you ride quite a lot of the bikes, that people still can't get it right. It's just, it's nice when it's crisp.
Can you turn the wheelie control off and still have traction?
Yes, yeah, so that's
Perfect.
got the lift control off at the moment,
Yeah.
and traction control on too.
So you can be half safe.
So you can be half safe, yeah.
Right, next one on your list, your good list, cruise control.
Yeah,
You sort of
just,
touched on it before.
super easy to
It
adjust.
should be on
up and
every
down.
bike.
That should be like, that should just be in Euro 5. Every bike should have cruise control if it's got ride-by-wire, because it's so easy, it's so nice.
The best thing is about keeping to speed limits. That's the biggest thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and like there's so many 50s, so many average speeds. It just makes life so much easier.
And to give you right hand a rest sometimes when you're on a long distance. Right, next on our list are tyres. Metzeler Road Tech 02 tyres.
Yep. So the eagle-eyed among you will know that that is not the OE tyre. That is Bridgestone's S23. They're a reasonable tyre, pretty good tyre, but I thought I wanted to try something a little bit different. So this is a new offering from Metzeler that we stuck on.
Sports touring tyres.
Yes.
Bridgestone's are sports tyres.
Yeah. So these, but although it's pigeonholed as a sports touring tyre,
It's still sporty.
Yeah, it's still sporty. The thing that's been most impressive is, you know, we were talking about the cruise control earlier. They are super stable, they're super quiet, but in the rain, they are absolutely
They're like wets,
amazing.
aren't they?
It's like cheating. Yeah, so that's been, I tell you what, it's actually sort of transformed the 09 as well into something that's just, you can really take liberties with it. And that the tyres are a big part of that. They are brilliant just in all conditions. They warm up really quickly, and they've done sort of 1,500 miles, and
Hardly.
I've tried to do my very best to mark them, and they've just been. Yeah.
And the ride quality of those is really plush as well. Really nice.
They've been really impressive, but there will be a full review of them coming soon as well.
Okay. 3 more things on your good list. Mirrors.
Yes. So this is one thing that really frustrates me when you get on a reasonably expensive bike that's got bad mirrors. Like, that's something that should always be at least reasonably good. I think the test for me is sitting at 70 on, you know, cruise control or on throttle, and just how much it vibrates. So it's sort of a testament to what Yamaha have done, because a lot of their bikes recently, I've noticed they've got some quite good mirrors, and I find it quite important. I spend a lot of time looking in my mirrors, and they are really crisp, really clear. They don't vibrate too much, and you also get quite a good sort of space out and behind as well. So I know they don't look very pretty, but they do a really good job.
Do the job.
Yeah.
Sticking with the front of the bike, you like the screen.
Yes, so I do and I don't like the screen. So
is it standard?
This is not standard. This is a Yamaha accessory.
Yeah.
This is the bigger one, so it's quite chunky. Obviously, in a naked bike, you do get quite a lot of, well, you get no wind, you get no protection, so you do get quite aggressively hit by the wind. That one does offer quite a bit of protection. It makes a big difference, although the shape of it doesn't give you the smoothest airflow over. You do actually get a little bit of buffeting from it. So when you're sitting at sort of 70, 75, it's not the crispest of airflows. You do get a little bit of buffeting, but it makes a massive difference. It actually does pretty well to protect you from the rain as well.
Non-adjustable.
Non-adjustable, bolted in.
Easy to fit.
Well, it would be easy to fit if you're very good at fitting stuff. It took me a while.
Did it?
And you've got to put got to put this front section on as well, and then I went for the hand guards.
Right.
Because I like a bit of, I get cold hands, so I like a bit of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like
keep your hands.
Yeah.
And then finally, on your good list is the tank bag that you've got. So it's an SW Motec. They make brilliant luggage.
So
I use it.
I want to say the tank bag is amazing. It's absolutely incredible. It's really easy to fit, really easy to get on, really easy to get off. It's built brilliantly. It is an SW Motec bag, but because of the Yamaha badge on it, the RRP is significantly higher.
Right.
So if you can get a good deal from a dealer, by all means do it. But if you can't, then it's worth shopping around, because there is a premium for that Yamaha badge, which you don't need really.
And also, if you get a non-Yamaha one, you can use it on a different bike.
Exactly.
But they're brilliant. The tank rings and they're magnetic, aren't they? Just, you can almost chuck it on from a distance.
I've never used a tank bag before for an extended
Well,
period
you've
of
never
time.
been old enough, have you? But now you're entering.
Yeah, I know. I hated them.
You're getting towards your 30s now.
I know, I'm getting old now, but they're always too intrusive. Whereas this one's it's the urban tank bag, and it is extendable, but it's enough space for me to get a pair of shoes, shorts, and a t-shirt in, and it's not too intrusive, which I quite like because I like getting over the tank. And, you know.
And you can lean against the tank bag. I like that.
Nice.
I love a tank bag. Right then, we've got your list of bad points.
Yep.
You're probably, you know, clutching at straws here because there's probably not a lot of bad points really. But the first one I agree. Appearance.
Yeah.
Is fugly, you said. That's what they wanted.
Yeah. I feel like they sort of go out of their way to make bikes ugly in order just to, you know, diversify a bit, I suppose, you know, make them recognisable. But it's no matter how many times you open your garage door, it's not a looker.
No.
Like I almost can't wait just for the XSR 900 GP for a bit of garage wood, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because that front end on it looks like the first Iron Man, doesn't it? And it's.
Some people like it, don't they? Some
Yeah.
people don't. I'm not a fan of the MT styling. That's what puts me off the MT-10, which is an amazing bike, but I couldn't live with one for that looks.
Yeah, that's the only like
Okay.
real nice thing.
Yeah, it's not
about
giving
it.
you garage wood, as you would
Nah.
say. Okay. Next on your list is fuel range and tank capacities. You said,
Yeah.
although it's possible to get over 150 miles out of a tank, is hard work. And on normal casual ride with some fun thrown in, it's closer to 110 miles. So is that 110 to the light or 110 total?
So, if you're really going out and having a good time, it will be I can get it under 100 to the light.
Mm-hmm.
What I have noticed is the light isn't particularly accurate.
Yep.
So it tells you it's got 0 miles, and you've still got an extra sort of half a litre or a litre in.
Fast and loose, running it down to 0.
I've learned from the best.
Oh, kids of today.
Well, you've got to do it. It's all for the test, isn't it? But yeah, so the light isn't particularly accurate, and it's quite frustrating as well because it will go from 40 miles, it will sort of count down in mileage, and then it will just go to 30, and then it will suddenly go to 0.
Yeah.
So you've got to be a bit careful of that, but it does overestimate slightly. But yeah, I've never really been one for worrying too much about tank range because I think if a bike is worth it, keep feeding it. You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
It's worth it. But it has been quite frustrating. It is a 14-litre tank, so it is very small and it is very thirsty as well. As soon as you start opening the throttle, it does get itself very excited, and it's something that I've never really noticed as a bugbear before. And I've had some pretty extreme long-termers in my life. But on this thing, when you're only in double digits and the light comes up, you are like, oh,
No, not again.
not again.
Yeah.
But it's sort of
The price worth paying sometimes.
it's a price worth paying, just about. But it is, if you're going to be doing long journeys on it, you're going to be one of sitting on cruise control because you can sort of give yourself an extra 50 or 60 miles. But like the MT-10's very, very thirsty with a reasonably small fuel tank. It's sort of be an MT trait, isn't it?
Yeah. MT tank.
MT tank.
That was terrible. Right. Chain. You don't like the chain. Has needed to be adjusted twice.
Yeah, I think it's quite a cheap chain. Obviously, there is a lot of torque on offer. It does stretch a little bit, so I would recommend probably putting a slightly nicer, slightly stronger chain on it.
Yeah.
It's
How many miles has this done, by the way?
so this is only just over 2,000 now.
So two adjustments in 2,000.
And I tend to be quite aggressive on the throttle, but not anything out of the ordinary. But it is something that I have picked up on when I've ridden MT-10s for a reasonable amount of time as well. So I was surprised on this because obviously it's not got anywhere near as much oomph. But yeah, it's something to keep an eye on because it does get pretty loose pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Headlight. Weak.
Yeah, the headlight's not the best.
Really?
Yeah, it's a shame because it sort of looks like it might have a bit of go to it when you stick it on. But as soon as you get out of street lighting, yeah, it's pretty dire.
Have you tried putting the front wheel on the floor? You might be able to see a bit better.
Well, I tried that, it still didn't work.
No.
Yeah, it's quite frustrating really because it's yeah, especially against some of the other bikes that are in this sector that have got really good lights. I know it's not a big deal, but I do a bit of riding in the dark. And, it makes it, I quite like being able to see where I'm going sometimes.
I think that's always handy.
Yeah, it's like the mirrors. I'm getting old, and
Yeah, exactly. Mirrors, tank
mirrors,
bag, lights.
yeah.
What's happening to you? Right, next is sat nav. It's Garmin, free but old, needs updating. So I assume
Yep.
This is the dash working with your app.
Yep.
And it's a Garmin. So is it an actual map or turn by turn?
Yep. So it's an actual. Well, so basically we'll start with it's separate to the Yamaha MyRide app, so you can connect up with that. This is a separate app from Garmin, and then you connect it up, and it is.
You got to have the MyRide running as well, so you got to have two apps.
Don't.
Oh, that's good.
But you have two that they're separate, which is a bit of an odd setup. You set it up, and it is turn by turn. It seems to, it connects well. I've never had a problem with Bluetooth connectivity, but the thing that really frustrates me with it is that it's quite old in its maps. So, for example, if you go down the A1 and you get to Cambridge, it still thinks that old fuel station that's been shut for 5 years is a fuel station that's open, and it's got the old road layout. And that's been 4 or 5 years done now.
And that's with everything updated on the app?
Yep, everything's updated. It's in I've checked it multiple times.
Yeah, so if you're relying on that fuel station with this tank,
and it's taken me some weird routes as well. When I come to meet you on Donington, when I was riding the XSR with the exact same interface, with the exact same Garmin, it took me miles out of the way.
That's right, yeah.
And I can't work out, even though when you put it in the fastest way, it takes you some strange ways. It takes you down roads that are different on the app, and it's just not the cleanest, crispest sort of app. It's such a shame, really, because it's something that's quite a simple fix.
It is, and it's quite amazing, really, that there even is sat nav on a bike like this.
Yeah.
The original had really basic clocks. You wouldn't have even dreamt it had sat nav. So it could be better. It's a shame. Next on the list of not so good points is pillion comfort.
Yeah. So, right, it's by all means. Yeah. So it's not the worst bike in existence, but for a naked, you sort of expect it to be a little better than it is. Like, the actual footprint of the seat's really nice. So I've taken my partner on it quite a few times. We've done a fair amount of reasonable journeys as well, so a couple of sort of 200-mile days. And the main problem is A, the stiffness of the seat, and B, the actual space between the seat and the foot pegs. So there isn't actually a lot of space between seat and foot pegs when you're perched on top.
Yep.
So although she's got good coverage because she's not sitting too high, the seat is really hard and gives you a sore bum, and the actual pegs to seat means it's just a bit cramped, and it's not quite as spacious as it could be.
Yeah.
Which is it's one of them things. But if you're going to be doing a lot of pillion miles, I'd definitely put a slightly higher, softer pillion seat on it.
Yep. Okay, next one. Lack of remote adjuster for preload and carrying luggage, or you mentioned that.
We mentioned that. Yeah.
If you're going to actually take pillions and luggage, you need that, don't you?
Yeah.
Second from last, ABS is very intrusive, so the SP is better.
Yeah, so I haven't ridden the SP, but I've spoken to our colleague Chris, and basically even the fact that on the SP you can deactivate the rear, and maybe the front software is not much different in terms of its software, but it's the actual way that the bike's set up, it's just not as intrusive, whereas on this it's got that sort of Yamaha feeling where the brakes, even though they've updated the master cylinder and stuff for this, it still just takes a bit of that shine and that bite away, because you can sort of feel that the ABS is sitting there and waiting to jump in, and it's just such a shame, because it just that's one of the aspects and elements of this bike where it just misses out slightly. It's just on that initial feel on the brakes, and I think if they could just nail the ABS software, I think it would make such a difference. It's
such a familiar story though, isn't it, with most Japanese bikes?
It's got that Japanese feel to it. It's just a bit reserved, and it's a bit too. It's just ready and waiting to go. Yeah.
Is the XSR the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I felt that at Donington when I rode that. Real shame, because it's such a integral part of your riding experience, because you're braking all the time, aren't you? And if that feels wooden and vague and problematic, it's not going to be as enjoyable.
Yeah, and you can only turn it down to its lowest. You can't turn it off, or which is a shame, because it's something that you just so close, but it's still annoying.
It's interesting you say this is just under 1,000, because it's tiny. When you think 1,000 has been big, don't you?
Yeah.
Right, finally, wet grip as standard on the standard tyres.
So yeah, that was something that I struggled with initially. I found that the S23s were good. They could offer shed loads, all you could want on the road really in the drive.
I mean, it's worth mentioning those S23s are OE versions. They're not the ones you buy in the shop.
Exactly. And it's, I believe, I'm not completely 100% sure that it's one compound rather than multiple compound. And when we got this, obviously the summer's not been particularly amazing or special, has it? At the first half of it, it was horrible and wet and cold, and it was much better when it's warmer, but when it was cold and wet in those mornings, because of the torque hit on this, it does, you do get that straight away. The traction control is brilliant on it, but it's just that initial feeling when it's cold. It's just it doesn't give you that, you know, sense of feeling, the sense of confidence that you sort of hope for, especially when the conditions aren't great.
But if you were to change the normal S23s, it might be better.
I think it definitely would.
That's a shame, isn't it, that OE tyres give that brand of tyre or that brand of tyre company a bad reputation. But then putting these Road Techs on, yes, a no-brainer. It's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly that. And it's just the little feeling when it just starts spinning, or it just feels like you're almost on ice. And it's just such a shame, because it's like the little things to make it perfect. But yeah, that's one thing when it's cold and when it's wet. When it was warmer, they were much better. The temperatures are higher. When they're sort of 10 and upwards, it's when it's below that. That's when it's really skittish. And that's where I've found that the Road Techs, all right, these are the proper iteration of the tyre, but they do make a big difference to confidence.
Sounds like you've had a good time on this bike.
I have, yes, and I didn't want to give it back. It's it's been brilliant. It's been fun. It's been incredibly reliable. I've tried my very best to be as harsh on it as possible. Yeah. And it's come through with flying colours.
And you've got it for another month or so now, haven't you? So you've got a bit more mileage to put on it.
Yeah, Yamaha keep ringing and I keep putting the phone down.
Keep putting the phone down.
So yeah, it's been really enjoyable. I'd say if you're looking for a naked that's sort of looking to tick all the boxes, all right, it's not the sportiest, all right, it's not the most comfortable, all right, it's not the best
looking.
Yeah, definitely not the best looking. But if you've got a diagram of all of the points it's hitting, it hits all of them really well. It's a real jack of all trades, and that's why I love it. Yeah,
I can't wait to ride it eventually.
We'll have to do a swap.
You'll have to do a swap. Well, thanks very much for showing us around your bike, talking through it. Thanks very much for watching, and stay tuned for more long-term videos coming here very soon.